Good afternoon. My name is Augusta Nneka Nadi. I'm the head of strategic communications for the Anambra State Investment Promotion and Protection Agency. I'll be the moderator for today, and special thanks to everyone that has joined us. We will be discussing exploring the economic potentials of the Onitsha River Port. But before we start, let us just take the national anthem. Thank you so much. Now we will take the opening remarks from the MD and SIPA. Mr. Marco Koye.
Good morning, everyone. The Managing Director, National Inland Waterways, the Commissioner, Anambra State Ministry of Transport, the Managing Director, Universal Elysium Consortium, the General Manager, Onitsha River Ports, the Head Financial Advisory Debt Solutions of the West, representatives of the organized private sector, all cabinet members, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Anambra State Government, I welcome you to this conference where we gather together to discuss the tremendous economic potential of the Onitsha River Port. It is indeed a pleasure to have all the major stakeholders with a vested interest in the success of this project joining us for this conversation. We extend our gratitude to each one of you for taking the time to participate as we delve into the next steps following the concession of the port and to explore how this project can be optimized to benefit the economy of the Southeast and all the other regions who this essentially opens up. Sometime in the late 1970, the need for a river port in the Southeast region along the banks of the River Niger was recognized. Consequently, in 1983, under the administration of President Shehu Shagari, the Onitsha River Port was completed. However, the asset was never fully optimized for various reasons, despite its potential to completely open up the economies of the three regions in Nigeria: the Southeast, the South-South, and the North-Central. Today, we applaud the federal government and the National Inland Waterways Authority for their vision in recognizing the gold mine that is the Onitsha River Port. We also commend them for their decision to involve the private sector in managing the port operations. As Mr. Governor, Professor Tao Solido often emphasizes, government has no business running a business. Instead, it should focus on creating the enabling environment for private sector to thrive. This synergy between the public and private sectors is precisely what we aim to spotlight in today's conversation. By fostering collaboration and partnership, we can unlock the full potential of the Onitsha River Port and pave the way for sustainable economic growth and development in the state, region, and the country at large. Now we will listen to NIWA, the concessionaire, the Anambra State Government, the General Manager of the Port, the project finance expert, and the organized private sector active in the state discuss the next step following this concession and how this project truly can unlock the economic potential of our region. We understand that the capacity for our Zoom meeting has reached full capacity already, but we also ensure that the conference is live streamed on Facebook. For those following the live stream, please feel free to engage by leaving your comments and questions. Our dedicated team members will ensure that you are properly involved in the discussion. Once again, we express our gratitude to all participants for their presence and commitment to this endeavor. Let us now embark on an engaging and productive session with the shared goal of realizing the remarkable opportunities that lie ahead for Anambra and our great nation. Thank you, and may Anambra and Nigeria succeed.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we're going to call on Madam Commissioner, the Anambra State Ministry of Transport, Mrs. Patricia Ikwebike, for her welcome address.
Thank you, Augusta. On behalf of Anambra State, and especially the governor of the state, Professor C.C. Soludo, CFR, we are indeed honored that the entire world is tuning in to this program that we have. And we also thank technology that is allowing us to leapfrog into the 21st century. The essence of our meeting today is to actually bring more awareness to the Onitsha Seaport, which a lot of people have not known that is now in operation. The concessionaire will throw more light on that. And in particular, again, you'll find that Anambra State is keying into the national transport policy. Anambra State is keying into the intermodal transportation, where we talk about water transportation, rail transportation, the air transportation, land and pipeline. And we're doing all this to be in line with the 21st century. The state is positioning itself to be an investment-friendly state, so that with the models of transportation, more commerce will come to the state, and it will be an enabling environment for investment. The port, as you know, is sited and properly situated in the midst of commerce, Onitsha. Onitsha, history has shown us and told us that is steeped in commerce. And the port would bring in almost 60%, if not 70% of all the containers that come to the southeast. So the port is particularly situated to make business more friendly to the users. There's not much to be said, but in particular, we need to know that for a project this size, all hands must be on deck. We need to collaborate both at the national level, at the state level, and at the international level. And most especially, more collaboration will be with the private sector. So I won't take much of our time. I would want the rest of the program to start going. Time is money, and most of us in the state always stick to time. So on the basis of that, I welcome all the invitees, and the people that can't get in onto Zoom. There will be a breakout session, breakout rooms, or technology is now our friend. It's being streamed, live stream on Facebook. So, and it's also being recorded. So whatever happens, you get to hear the entire gist of this. Once again, welcome everybody, and let's deliberate profitably. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Commissioner. Next on our agenda is remarks of special guests. And I just want to recognize the presence of the chairperson, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria for Anambra, Enugu, and Ebonyi, Lady Ada Chukwudozie. I think she's here. I don't know if she would want to make one or two remarks before we move straight to the panelists. Hello, Ma, you here?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And I'm so happy to be part of this conference. I think that the subject in question is something that is of interest to all of us at various levels, especially for us at the organized private sector. And I'm so happy to be part of this discourse. Thank you.
And now we can take our keynote remarks from the Managing Director, Universal Elysium Consortium, and the concessionaire for the Onitsha River Port, Dr. George Wang. Osai, you can unmute now.
Thank you very much. Augusta, you finally got the pronunciation right. Permit me to stand on existing protocols for lack of time, and I just go straight to the point today. You know, the identity of Onitsha itself is linked to the river Niger. Niger is really important to Onitsha. The history of the port goes as far back as the 1800s. Onitsha was an important trading port for the Royal Niger Company during the 1850s, when the port was a major transit for agricultural produce. Onitsha port itself continued to be a major conduit for trade, even when the charter granted the Royal Niger Company was revoked. In fact, I recall visiting His Royal Highness, the Obi of Onitsha, with the delegation from the Port of Antwerp, and he regaled us with a lot of stories as seeing when he's witnessed large vessels berthing in Onitsha when he was a young boy. And so this must have been before our independence, just after the independence. So Onitsha itself, the port, has always existed. It's always been there, and it's always served as a key trading port. The development of the modern day Onitsha River Port did not even start today, as Mark Okoye pointed out. It was first commissioned by the then President Shehu Shagari administration in 2012, and then recommissioned by the Goodluck administration, which basically put together what we have today. Indeed, if Shagari was here with us today, he'll be amazed that we're still talking about exploring the economic potential of the Onitsha port, even today in 2023. This speaks to the mythical Mount Olympus nature of the port. It also speaks to the miracle that we have begun to witness, which is the revitalization of the Onitsha River Port as a major driver of economic growth in Nigeria and the Southeast in particular. The present history of the port started when the federal government in 2017 commissioned started the concession process for the port through the rehabilitate, operate, transfer model. After a competitive and transparent procurement process, the Universal Elysium Consortium emerged as the preferred bidders, and subsequently the concessionaires to the port. So began another chapter in the history of our beloved Onitsha port. This new chapter is being written even now to reflect the aspirations of the people of Nigeria and the Southeast. You know, I personally have historical ties to Onitsha. My parents lived in Onitsha. I recall even when I was a young boy living in Lagos, that frequent trips to Onitsha. And I witnessed firsthand the Onitsha in all of its glory. You know, it was the biggest market indeed in the whole of West Africa. A lot of reasons have led to the Onitsha, the present state of Onitsha. A lot of the trade has moved to Lagos and adjoining other cities. And this is because of the multiple bottlenecks along our highways. You know, you see police checkpoints, you see the poor state of the highways. And because of this, a lot of the traders moved. But over the years, our citizens have hoped that the potentials of Onitsha as the foremost commercial hub in Africa would be rekindled. Today, it gives me great pleasure to inform you that the process of doing so is already underway. Let me talk a little bit about who we are. Universal Elysium Consortium Limited, it's a Nigerian specialist infrastructure service provider. We were granted the concession for a 30-year, we were granted a 30-year concession for the ports in that was last year in 2022, it was finally handed over to us. Part of our responsibility would be to rehabilitate the existing port infrastructure, construct new facilities, including warehouses, administrative buildings, cargo handling equipment, waterway infrastructure, install new equipment and technologies, and upgrade the existing facilities to meet international standards. With a view to delivering the expected benefits of the Onitsha River Port concession, Universal Elysium Consortium is partnering with the Port of Antwerp, Bruges. The Port of Antwerp itself is the second largest port in Europe. So we just didn't come as Universal Elysium. We have partners, important partners like the Port of Antwerp, and the general manager of the port here today is actually from the Port of Antwerp. What about our business? Our business comprises three distinct but related undertakings. The first is the port handling services. The second is the free trade zone operations. And the third, we have ancillary services that we provide. Regarding the port handling services, we're set up to handle all kinds of cargo. Our plan is to initially move about 10% of the total cargo coming into Nigeria. When the Honorable Minister for Transport was speaking, she alluded to the fact that the Southeast is home to about 60% of the cargo that comes into the country. So, and we said to ourselves, if we can take 10% of this cargo initially, if it were to come through Onitsha, then it would be amazing. That is even our modest projections, and we're keyed in to do a lot more, you know? So we plan to handle about 70,000 TEUs of cargo. That's 70,000 20-foot container, TEUs of 20-foot containers, and about 60,000 TEUs of 40-foot containers just in our first year. And we plan to scale that as we go. Some of the services that will be in this port include custom clearance, cargo inspection, and other value-added services. Also, we plan to a free trade zone operation. We plan to have free trade zone services there. We're currently going through the licensing process. And what, of course, that would do is we'll intend to bring in a little bit of light manufacturing, bringing in raw materials into the zone to do finished products. Then in terms of ancillary services that we intend to provide within the port, we intend to build a power plant to provide electricity to the port and sell excess power into the grid. We intend to build additional warehouse facilities, gas and liquid storage facilities, as well as silos for storage of grains, amongst others. We indeed estimate that Onitsha will lead to the creation of huge amounts of direct and indirect employment opportunities. Will increase tax revenues for government. There are a number of state government officials here would be happy to know. What is our financing strategy? I know I have little time, so I'll just go straight. Our financing strategy has always been to a mixture of debt to equity. We're looking at 70-30 debt to equity ratio. The goal, of course, is to raise 100 million for this project, and we're already on our way. As part of our commitment to promote inclusiveness, we have encouraged equity participation by capable Anambra citizens and people from the Southeast and Nigerians in general. And we've been having a lot of them. We are in deep conversations with a number of them. We've also looked at, had interesting conversations with a number of DFIs, including the ADB, the Afri-Exim Bank, the Development Bank of Nigeria, and even the Sovereign Wealth Investment Authority. We're talking to all of them. we've received immense cooperation and commitment. Now, what do we expect from government and other stakeholders? You know, to successfully harness the economic potential of Onitsha Port, we require the synergy of actors spanning from public to private sectors, including the concession of the port through the PPP model is a recognition of this. It's a handshake between the public and private sector. Firstly, we expect that the current regulatory environment provided by the federal and Anambra state governments will continue to be favorable. We extend our thanks to the governor of Anambra State, who has been a solid rock behind us and offering all sorts of support, offering audience to us when needed. We also thank the MD of NIWA, Mr. George or Chief George Mogalu, who has always welcomed us, always taking this project as his priority. We extend thanks to them, but we hope that it continues to be like this going forward. We also, you know, the Onitsha River Port is part of an ecosystem of commerce and logistics, that includes different components that are mutually dependent. It's therefore necessary that the parts of the ecosystem necessary for the optimization of that port is in good shape. For example, we expect that the scale and magnitude of this, for us to reach what we want, we really hope that certain things will be done. And I can speak, you know, the importance of dredging of that river is so critical to ensure that the potential of this port is attained. So it's dredging. You see, and it's not just for our benefit, it's also for the benefit, the environmental benefits of dredging is also important. If we dredge, the issue of flooding that arises from the Niger would be eliminated. So it's just not, of course, we need the river to be dredged so that our vessels can pass, but it's also important for the environmental reasons, for the stakeholders to take the issue of dredging seriously. Again, another thing I would like to mention is the security situation. We recognize that for the place to thrive, the issue of security needs to be dealt with. Even security along the waterways is really, really important. You know, on that note, and being very conscious of time, let me conclude by saying that we at Universal Elysium see the concession of the Onitsha River Port as a great privilege. We see ourselves as custodians or trustees of the dreams of majority of the people of Nigeria and the Southeast in particular. We have been called to great service to our fatherland, to our homeland, and to our people, and we realize we can't afford to fail. However, we can't also succeed on our own. It's on this note that we urge all relevant stakeholders to support us to actualize the potentials of this very great and important port. I thank you all, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the remarks. That was our keynote speaker, Dr. George Wambu, the concessionaire for the Onitsha River Port. He is the managing director of the Universal Elysium Consortium. Thank you so much, sir. And now I think we can go properly into the panel discussion. I'm just going to ask the panelists to unmute to start their videos so we can finally discuss what we came here for, exploring the economic opportunities of the Onitsha River Port. Please, I just ask you to unmute and then start your video. And on our panel today, we have the Honorable Commissioner from the Anambra State Ministry of Transport, Mrs. Patricia Igwebike. We also have the General Manager for Ports and Environmental Services, National Inland Waterways Authority, Engineer Bahi Fidelis. And we have the General Manager for the Onitsha River Port from the Royal Port of Antwerp, Then we have the Head of Financial Advisory and Debt Solution, FBN Quest, Dr. Tonai Joko. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Dr. Joko, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Can you start your video, please? Is it possible? And Mr. Bahi, Engineer Bahi, can you hear me? Thank you so much, sir. Engineer Bahi, can you hear me? Hello, sir. Okay, I think we've lost him. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Wanes. Now, the Anambra State economy is largely reliant on its trade and commerce sector. And you agree with me that this project has the potential to solve some major logistics faced by the business communities active in the state. Based on your experience from the Port of Antwerp, and now as the General Manager for the Onitsha River Port, in your opinion, how can the port's current operations be further improved to address some of these challenges?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wannes. Let me introduce myself first. So I am a Belgian national with 45 years experience in port business. I've been as an expat working in the Middle East for 8 years, and I'm actually 1 year old in Nigeria. So I'm a little child if it comes down to Nigeria. So I came into Nigeria last year when the concession was given to Universal Elysium, and I'm more than happy to be participating in the success of Onitsha River Port. Now, Onitsha River Port as such, let me go back into what I did in the past. So what is my specialty? My specialty is in development of new ports. So over the last years in the Middle East, I've been responsible for several startups of ports. In Belgium itself, I started entirely to inland ports like this in Belgium. So the possibilities of Onitsha River Port, as I do recognize them, are endless. As our managing director already said before, the amount of cargo coming into the river port or possible coming into the river port is tremendous. If we are talking figures, we are talking at an import of 1.6 million TEU. Now, as mentioned before, a TEU is an equivalent of a 20-foot container. So by giving that fact, we aim to of 60% of that specific cargo is heading southeast, so meaning that it is coming into Anambra State and surrounding states. Even if we aim a small percentage, as Dr. George already mentioned, in the first year, 10 to 12%, and even if we would, out of the 60% increase, take 70% of that volume, because I honestly believe that some of the cargo still remain transported by road, that means in 5 years' time, we will be handling 840,000 containers annually. So the potential is there. The opportunities are there. By creating also the free zone, you will attract additional investments surrounding these kind of hubs, as we call it, where investors will be willing to build their small size factories and exporting goods. So we are in the process right now, and that is going very well, to have our bounded license, terminal license for operating. That would mean that Onitsha River Port would become a port of origin and a port of destination. So meaning that all traders and all cargo owners will be able to clear and their cargo into Onitsha. By creating a free zone, you will have extra opportunities for exporters to make use of Onitsha River Port as well, because they will be in an advanced position to export straight away to wherever they need to export around the world. So the options are endless. But as we mentioned before, what are our bigger challenges now? Our bigger challenges is obviously the dredging of the river, the security of the river, and we had already several discussions. This is a traffic situation around the river port as well, where we need to look into. We are close to receiving our first barge. So actually, I was hoping to conclude that prior to our ending of our first year concession. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get a barge in by the 15th of July, but very soon we will receive our first barge with cargo coming up the stream. So we are really looking forward in order to make this a success.
Yeah, one is just to clarify, you mentioned that currently the port is having 1.6 million TEUs coming in. Is this annually? How frequent is this?
Well, the 1.6 million TEU, which is coming down to roughly 1 million boxes. So where does the TEU come from? So that it means there is a difference between a 20-foot and a 40-foot container. So the majority of imported cargo will be 40-foot containers. So if we are talking boxes, then we are talking 1 million boxes annually coming into Nigeria, whereas of 60% of these boxes, so meaning 600,000 boxes, are heading direction southeast. Now you need to understand what comes in needs to go out as well. So we calculate that for the 600,000 potential boxes which are coming into the southeast region, about 20% of that cargo is export cargo. There is a big imbalance in Nigeria of import and export cargo. So meaning that majority of these boxes coming into Onitsha needs to reposition as empties in the major seaports. But also meaning that as for now, 20% of the boxes will be loaded again in Onitsha and find their way to their final destination. Becoming a port of origin or a port of destination means that we will no longer depending on the major seaports. What we will do is all customs formalities will be done in Onitsha. They go into the seaport where you then only have a transshipment. There will be no further control needed by customs. So the process will go much more faster because currently you have congestion in the major seaports based on customs clearance and all these kind of things. Does that make clear, or is that answering your question?
Does. Thank you so much. Now let's talk to Dr. Ejiofor. I wanted to just explain to us the pictorial opportunities that the Onitsha River Port presents. Now, we have to acknowledge that for an infrastructure of this size, there's need for us to explore creative financing to fully execute this project. Now, this is more so, as the World Bank has stated, that Nigeria needs about $3 trillion to bridge the infrastructure gap. Now, as a project finance expert, what are the key bankability issues that lenders would consider before providing funding for projects of this nature? Can you hear me? You're muted. I've just asked you to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes. Thank you very much, Augusta. Good afternoon, everyone. Just by way of introduction, my name is Tony Ejiofor. I lead the debt solutions business of FBN Quest. FBN Quest is the investment banking business of FBN Holdings. Now, in terms of infrastructure, we've been, quite successful with raising capital. Over the past 10 years, we've raised over $12 billion for, different parts of, the infrastructure space, energy infrastructure, pipeline infrastructure, road infrastructure, etc. Now, to sort of just drill specifically to the question, which, by the way, it's an interesting one because if you look at, you would actually find that port infrastructure is one of the most bankable type of infrastructure deals you can do. Okay, if you compare that to, for example, road infrastructure or water infrastructure, etc., port infrastructure, the economics actually make more sense. Particularly when you have a market as sizable as Onitsha. Okay. And I like the statistics that have already been thrown out there by both the MD and the GM. But at the end of the day, we'll need to drill down to specifics, specifics as to what would attract a lender to actually, put more money in terms of supporting expansion of a port, an inland port like the Onitsha River Port, for example. The first thing is, they would need to look specifically at the concession agreement that has been signed between whether it's NIWA and the concessionaire, and sort of determine how bankable is that agreement. To what extent are they able to, for example, where there's a default on the part of governments or even the sponsors, are they able to step in? So they are looking at what are the step-in rights that are available to them under that concession agreement. So that's one. Two is obviously with every counterparty dealing with government, okay, you're concerned about termination. So what happens is a 30-year concession, as we've heard from the MD. It's a 30-year concession, but what happens if, for example, 15 years down the line, for example, there are concerns around termination, and a government comes in and says, you know what, this concessionaire, for one reason or the other, whether it's political or for other considerations, we need to get rid of this guy and want to terminate. The question is, what sort of protection would debt providers get under circumstances like that? Typically, what you find are termination clauses that speak to, and they could, these days, they are structured as put and call options. And they are structured in such a way that whenever there's a termination for reasons, that have not been specifically identified in the concession agreement from a performance standpoint of the concessionaire, there will be specific clauses that ensures the debt is actually repaid, plus the interest that is outstanding. Now, this is a very important bankability concern for lenders, which they would want to make sure that there's a protection for them. The next is, what are the obligations of the grantor? Okay. In this case, right, when you sort of just look at the entire economics of that port, one of the things you'd immediately spot is that you need to drive throughput, okay, into that port. And whose responsibility would it be to drive that throughput? So, for example, when you build out the model, and you say to yourself, okay, for this port to be viable, you need to bring in X amount of containers, right? Under that circumstance, the question is, there might be need to have a government entity driving that throughput. Obviously there are things like that, but you need an independent party to drive that input and provide the level of reassurances that those size of containers and the number of containers required would actually get to the port to make the economics work. So those are some of the initial thoughts that would come to the mind of a lender from a bankability perspective. Obviously, there will be concerns around construction risk, cost overruns, etc. But all those can be dealt from a structuring perspective. But I think first of all, the question is to look at the base, and the base is the concession agreement. How has the procurement been done? Obviously, clearly, at least from our perspective, having sort of, been indirectly watching events, it does look like it's been a very competitive process. So I think from a funding perspective, lenders will be comfortable. Also, there will be a lot of, inquiry as to the track record of the sponsors and the promoters. And I do like the fact that, the Port of Antwerp is actually involved in the consortium, which will give lenders a lot of comfort. So I'll stop there on the back of those key points. And if there are additional questions, I'm happy to take them. Thanks, Augusta.
I want to ask Mr. Juanes if he has any comment before I move to Madam Commissioner, based on what he said. Someone is about to unmute. Do you have any comments before we go to Madam Commissioner? Okay, Madam Commissioner, can you hear me? I've asked you to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, August.
Okay, now your office has been working really hard to develop a transportation master plan for the state. How can the Onitsha River Port effectively integrate with the existing transportation infrastructure to assist connectivity within the region, within the state and the region in general? Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Well, the entire idea is that we need to have connectivity across the state, but most importantly, with the areas that generate revenue and commerce, and that's where the Onitsha River Port is very crucial to us as getting into the hub of our master plan. We have, as a ministry and a state, been interfacing with the seaport, and we're doing all that we can possibly do, and we're very disposed to being of assistance to the port. So, like I said in the beginning, it's collaboration, collaboration, collaboration all the way. So wherever they have issues, they have our direct lines, and they can reach out to us, and we'll do the best to make sure that the wheel keeps turning. So it's still early stages. Like the previous presenter said, the more that we know of the details. I've been talking with Dr. George, and he's been quite open. He shares quite a lot of documents with me. And I've also reached out to other ports. I've reached out to the Port of Aberdeen last year, and we're also talking. And so if there's anything that the state can possibly do, Port of Aberdeen is in Scotland, by the way. So if there's anything that the state could do or can do, we are quite disposed to do that. And developing our seaports and our water transportation is paramount. And that's where you tap into the blue economy. So we're talking about once you get the dredging done, not only that the containers and the ships will come in more easily, that will also open up us to cruises and open us to even getting a bit of the African continental free trade. So the sky is just the beginning with this project. So we are quite disposed to being of assistance. We will share with the Anambra during our town hall meetings where people are interested in new opportunities and new investment opportunities. We'll share as much as we can to make sure that this project is a success. Thank you, Augusta.
I'm still on you, Madam Commissioner. You just talked about what your ministry is doing, but considering the economic relevance of the river port, and I know you've spoken to this, but I just want to expatiate. How is your office, or how is the state through your office collaborating with the concessionaire to ensure that this river port is fully optimized?
Well, like the concessionaire will also tell you that it's still early stages for him. So the bulk of what needs to be done is basically with the concessionaire, not with the ministry. But the fallout of the project being a success is what will assist us. We are looking at connectivity. And when we talk about connectivity, we talk about intermodal transportation where the airport is almost a stone throw away. So that also makes it very, what is the word? I mean, it makes the project very viable, because if in the situation that when we roll out our master plan, we'll be talking about having a big terminal right there close to the seaport. So can you imagine with the train system that we're working on, you get the train, from the train, you can get onto the cruise, but that's not the essence of what we're doing today. The essence is to show more light. I don't want to draw away from what we are supposed to be doing. The essence is for the concessionaire to throw more light to what they are doing and provide investment options if people want to key into what they are doing. So that's the essence of what we should be channeling this conversation. Transportation is life. It cuts across everything. So if you open that kind of worms for me, I mean, I will go on and on and on, but let's stick to the point. And the point is the concessionaire today. Thank you, Augusta.
Let's go back to the general manager of the port. Sir,
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the dredging of the river. What do you think are the economic and social considerations that NIWA should actually consider as it relates to the development and operations of the port?
Well, first of all, allow me to pick in on the previous conversations. The figures do not lie. Whatever has been imported in Nigeria is known. Whatever headed this direction is known. We also know the state of the roads. So in Belgium, we strongly believe in a modal shift. So moving from road transportation to water transportation. You avoid congestions in the major seaports because you have a different model of operating. In Belgium, we were able to transport 70% of the cargo, which is in Belgium, over to the inland waterways. So that is one thing. Secondly, if you ask me the opinion, what should be done, I think we stated it already before. Our success, not only our success, the entire development of the River Niger, which would be economical booming, not only for Anambra State, but for different states, needs to be developed. And that can only be done when we are navigable 24/7, all year round, when we would be able to convince, but it's not convincing people. In the end of the day, everybody is knocking on our door, literally telling us when can we come, how can we come? But their major concern remains the same, is can we navigate on the river? Is it being dredged? What about security? And that's the only three questions we need to answer. So in terms of the viable situation of Onitsha River Port, as for now, we are in a good condition. Rainy season started, so we are free of doing our business for the next 6 months. But prior to the end of these 6 months, prior to the end of the year, we need to be dredged the river. Otherwise, coming close to the point that we cannot do business anymore. This is one thing. Secondly, what I would like to mention, and which Dr. George already mentioned before, as today, when I arrived last year, literally around the same time, the water level was not even as high as it is today. So the water level of this year will be even higher than expected last year. Last year, we had apparently in Nigeria, a record of the river height here in Onitsha. This will be exceeded this year, so it will be higher. So meaning that neighboring states, Anambra, Lokoja, Delta will be flooded. If you do a water maintenance or water control And I would go even further. If you would even dredge the river deeper, then you would be able to come up with smaller seagoing vessels, which then you will have an entirely different game. So having that is the main crucial thing, coming down to the point that you need to make sure that your environmental impact is as little as possible in terms of flooding. Having control areas where you would have water which you can put into the river when necessary. This is what we call in Belgium water control, you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And still on you, one is, considering how long you've been at the Onitsha River Port, are there any measures that you've taken to attract private sector investment into the port? Sorry, I can't hear you.
No, I'm back. Yeah, we are talking with, well, there are a couple of things we are talking to, especially also there is a program from the European Community for waste management. We are talking to multiple people who are willing and looking into the point where we look, say, are you interested in development something around here? Yes, we do.
Okay, I'm seeing some questions and comments in the chat box. Remember that you can just give your questions, write your name and your questions and put it in the chat box, and a team member will send it to us and we'll take it. So we're not allowing people to unmute themselves so that we don't get too rowdy. But if you have a question or a comment concerning this topic, please just put it in the chat box and we will take it. And I have a question here that reads, okay, that says we are from Michael Chimezie, says we are providers of bathymetry and hydrographic surveys, which can support navigation and dredging. So I think you'll most likely need to reach out to the concessionaire on that. That comment came from Michael Chimezie. We also have another one from Stanley, says there is a free trade zone investor group looking at investing in a strategic free trade zone location in West Africa for value-added manufacturing and supply chain support onward to the United States. So you might also want to reach out to the concessionaire for that. We also have another one from Emeka. It says, is the inland port automated? I think that's a question that we're going to allow Madam Commissioner to address. The question reads, is the inland port automated? We would have allowed someone from NIWA to take this question, but our NIWA contact has been struggling to join. So maybe Madam Commissioner will take that. But before I allow Madam Commissioner to unmute, I'll just take two more comments. From Ifnaya, I'd like to know if there will be a reduction of costs transporting goods from countries like China and Indonesia coming down to this Onitsha River Port. And that one, I'm going to let Juanes take that question. Now we also have, do we have badges currently coming into the Onitsha River Port? And that's for Juanes. But before I allow Juanes speak, I think Madam Commissioner should just respond to the question concerning inland port automation.
Well, when you come down to the question which has been referred, I saw a question coming by, are there already barge movements? Yes, there are barge movements, but they're from upstream. So what we are currently handling is tiles coming from Ajakuta, and they return with clay raw material back to Ajakuta. This is for a tile manufacturer. Secondly, the question which has been raised, would you be able to have containers directly coming in from China? The answer would be yes. As soon as we have our license as bounded terminal, then we would be able to directly receive this cargo. Although you need to keep in mind, bigger seagoing vessels will never be able to reach Onitsha. And then I'm talking about 18,000 TEU containers, so meaning vessels which carry 18,000 boxes on top of their vessel. So they have a draft about 14 meters, 15 meters, so they will never be able to reach Onitsha. But if you have this kind of cargo coming from China, for example, transported, your port of destination will at that point be Port of Onitsha. So what will happen is, for example, Lekki Port will receive these containers and put them in transshipment. Nothing has to be done on these containers unless there is a barge receiving them. So they put them on the barge and then they transport into Onitsha. Every clearance, every customs formality can be handled down here in Onitsha. So raising the question, can containers from China directly find a destination? Yes, as from the moment we have our license.
Can you also speak to the inland port automation?
Again, please.
The question was something around inland port automation.
Okay, no, we are, I think once we ever come that way, I'm a big fan of automation. I've been working in Europe on projects which is a container terminals fully automated. I don't think in this case Onitsha will be ready for automation. So everything will be handled by normal port equipment. For now.
Okay, Madam Commissioner, do you want to say something to just add to what he has said?
Well, I think ONES is in the best position to know what they're going to be doing at the port. But what we know is that whenever they have difficulties and they will require our assistance, will be there to assist them, have a synergy with them. So maybe Dr. George Wangu might be able to say whether on the issue of automation. Certainly not us on this moment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Commissioner. While we were speaking, the Managing Director for the National Inland Waterways Authority came in, Chief Dr. George Wangu. Hello, sir. We can see you.
Yes, suppose how are you?
I'm very fine, sir.
Thank you. My sincere apologies. It has been a matter of network already. Battling to the challenge of network. But I'm glad that yeah.
Okay, so far the conversation have been around exploring the economic opportunities of the Onitsha River Port, and more than once we have heard comments about the dredging of the river. I know that your organization is already working towards this, but can you just give us an update on this process?
All right, let me begin by apologizing sincerely for not being on quite early when you started. Not because I didn't want to be, but because we had the challenges of network. But be that as it may, the potentials of the Onitsha River Port is quite enormous. And that was the driving force. That was what encouraged me to pursue aggressively the issue of its concessioning. Fortunately, we've been able to conclude with that, and then a private sector player is now involved to deal with it. I heard the GM of the Onitsha River Port when he was talking about the issue of the challenge of dredging. That I agree with him. Not today, as we speak, not all the water channels in Nigeria are all year round navigable. A good number of it, yes, we have over 10,000 kilometers of inland waterways in this country, but it's only about 3,800 or thereabout that is all year round navigable. And effort is being made to make sure that we open up these channels. We've gone quite far. We've talked with some private sector players who are ready to partner with us to dredge through from the upper Benue down to the lower Niger up to the Escravos. And the discussions are quite impressive, and we've covered a lot of mileage. On our own part as an organization, what we are doing for now is maintenance dredging based on survey report that we receive. So as the reports come in, we intervene to be able to make sure that those areas that we think should be all year navigable are actually navigable within this period. We know that challenges like this come up more during the dry season, the early parts of the year, but towards the lower part of the year, the 6 months towards the end, the channels are a bit open to the extent that we can carry through cargo. So basically, we are in the process. We'll continue doing that. In terms of maintenance dredging, we're doing that right away. But in terms of capital dredging, we are discussing with private sector players, major investors from outside this country, who are ready to partner with us to make sure that we dredge open all the channels. So that's where we are.
Thank you, sir. Let's just take a few more comments before we go to the next question. From Blessing, I've asked this question, do we have barges currently coming into Onitsha Port? And I think Owanes has already responded to this. From Ismaila, I have, what is the level of Onitsha Port's performance? I also believe that the general manager for the port has responded to this question. From Ike, is there any concrete plans for dredging? Has a contract been awarded? I think the managing director has just responded to this also. And from Emeka, when is the concessionaire likely to secure the license needed to make it possible for transportation of goods directly from China to Onitsha? This is something that Dr. George would have to respond to as the concessionaire, not the MD. But I'll have to move on, and maybe he'll come in and then respond to one or two questions that have been directed to him after the panel discussion. Dr. Tona, are you there? Dr. Ejiofor, are you there? Now, you've spoken before about the bankability of infrastructure projects such as this, but what type of credit enhancement can be utilized for such projects that are similar to the Onitsha River Port? Can you just explain this to us in such a way that everybody, including people that are not finance experts, understand?
Okay, sure. Thank you very much, Augusta. So when we speak of credit enhancements, basically it's anything at all that ensures that your loan gets repaid, aside from your typical security. Okay. Now it gets a bit complicated for infrastructure projects because you have the government that is looking to make sure that prices are regulated, because these infrastructure projects have impacts on the day-to-day lives of people. Okay, so whether you're looking to fund water infrastructure, road infrastructure, port infrastructure, these are assets that have direct impact on the day-to-day lives of people. So prices will be sometimes the government will be sometimes looking to make sure they regulate prices. And obviously in the process of doing that, you then have a situation where the lenders are looking for support to make sure that the loan eventually gets repaid. So they are looking back to the government and saying, we know you have political risk concerns. Because of those political risk concerns, it does look like there's a limit to how we can stretch the economics of the project, and because of that, please give us X, Y, Z. So I've spoken to things like looking at the concession agreement, termination clauses, put and call options, etc. But I think the bottom line would be where you have funding gaps, right? And obviously, we do have challenges as to the what Naira interest rates are doing at the moment. But if we step outside that conversation for a second, what you then want to always make sure is, from a government's perspective, are there things like credit guarantees that provide comfort to the lenders that where something goes wrong, for example, the government is able to step in and cure. And these are not, sort of long-term, and they are not like plain vanilla guarantees. They sort of just deal with specific challenges that the project might encounter. That's one. Number two, you're also looking at, there are certain things that obviously the private sector cannot handle on their own. So I think it was Juanes that talked about security. these are things that, you know, clearly risk elements you need to move specifically to the government, and make sure that they are able to provide, in some cases, if it was a road infrastructure, you know, availability of that road, guarantee availability of that road. In this case, under a port concession, right, I talked about things like a throughput guarantee to make sure indeed those containers are able to get there under the arrangements that currently exist. Now, the other consideration, you know, I think from, you know, a credit enhancement perspective is whenever you're doing a project finance transaction, and again, I'll touch on, you know, go a bit deep into the project finance world as it relates to infrastructure. What you want to sort of also make sure is that you build in, you know, a debt service reserve account, okay? What that does for your project is where there are delays or whatever it is that, you know, delays payment, or the size of payment is not sufficient to meet that particular period of debt service, you're able to dip into a reserve account. Now, in some cases, because of the project economics, you're not able to have a reserve account at the size that you expect to have. Now, under that circumstance, you then need some sort of support to make sure that where there are delays, that there's a reserve account to actually look to. Again, you know, you're looking to the grantor to support with that. So those are just some of the key things that I thought perhaps just for the purpose of this audience to highlight. Thank you, Augusta. Back to you.
Thank you. And let's go back to Dr. Mwalu, Chief Mwalu. Now, looking at this crowd, how can stakeholders collaborate to overcome some of the challenges that have been mentioned, and some of the challenges regarding infrastructure, regulatory framework, bureaucratic processes to ensure sustainable development, not just for the Onitsha River Port, but for port development in general? You're muted, sir. You're still muted.
Am I still muted?
No, you're fine now.
I'm fine now, okay. You see, what you're doing now, creating a platform like this for stakeholder engagement is quite necessary. It's something that should be encouraged so that you create a platform where stakeholders will be looking at the issues that concern port development on a regular basis, and then be able to provide solution. Government on its own part has a role to play by way of avoiding policy somersault, by way of putting some level of investment to encourage participation, guarantees to the private sector so that they can be key, they can be involved, because you can't drive this process without the active participation of the private sector. I remember that in the course of concession of Onitsha River Port, and when I was pursuing aggressively the agenda of moving cargo between Lagos and Onitsha, and Port Harcourt and Onitsha, I tried as much as possible to engage the chambers of commerce. I also engaged the Importers Association of Nigeria, because they are the actual players. They are the only ones who can effectively put into use these ports. So getting them involved as part of any policy initiative must be a welcome development and should be supported and encouraged. Is it the money we need? The developing this sector precisely is quite an expensive one. Nobody can rule out that fact. And therefore, there must be synergy, there must be partnership between the port owners, the port operators, and then the private sector players who are involved in making use of this port. So both the federal government, the state government, the immediate operating environment must encourage the process. So it's something that involves everybody. And one way through which we can get actively involved is through engagements like this, where everybody will have an opportunity to make contributions, find out what the challenges and problems are from the operators themselves, and then be able to see to what extent we can all get involved so that we can drive the process for the benefit of our people.
Still on you, Chief. Thank you so much, but still on you. Considering how expensive dredging is and how frequent you'd have to maintain it, what are the investment opportunities in that sector? Have you tried talking to some private players that are interested in maybe providing some funds for the dredging of the Onitsha River Port?
Like I did say earlier, the people who are engaging aggressively now are the private sector players. The two companies we have discussed, we have gone to a very reasonable extent in our discussion with regards to helping us in dredging through the Onitsha, the entire channel, beginning from the upper Benue down to the lower Niger, up to the Escravos, and even up to to Bayelsa down towards the Atlantic, are private sector players. These are two very big organizations. One is Chinese driven, the other one is both American and Nigeria driven. And we've gone quite far in course of our discussion. The government also has a role to play here, and we're involving the government, being on the side of government. And then we are negotiating with them on the way they can help, where they can be involved, because it's an industry, is a sector that requires investment for maximum benefit. There's quite a lot to gain from the sector, and I'm happy that the people we are talking with now have actually keyed into our vision, and they share our sentiments with regards to developing this sector. So it is not government actually; it's more or less private sector-driven initiatives.
A number of questions that are directed to the concessionaire. I don't know if he's willing to join this conversation. Just ask you to. Hello, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm here now.
Okay. Okay. One of the feedback we got, and still concerning the dredging of the river, is how this process can solve, and this is a direct quote, 90% of Nigeria's flooding issue. Have you tried some creative financing, such as tapping into green financing, or maybe talking to some DFIs concerning this dredging process?
Is that for me or for?
Yes, for you.
For my landlord.
It's for Chief, but I'll also like you to comment on this. But after Chief have responded.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so you want me to respond now? I thought it is a question meant for me or meant for the.
No, it's meant for you, Chief, and
Okay.
then he will comment.
Okay, can you just repeat the question again?
I said, considering how important the dredging of this river is to Nigeria's flooding issues, have you tried talking to DFIs or maybe people that can unlock green financing and presenting the dredging process as an environmental issue?
Yes. In fact, this morning we had a meeting with regards to this particular issue. In fact, as if you were there in the meeting, it has to do with the issue of this flooding. We all understand one basic fact, and the basic fact is that unless capital dredging is done, unless we open up this channel, we'll always remain challenged by the issue of flooding. Flooding is a challenge. The major way to address the issue of flooding on our rivers is only to open up these channels, and the only way we can open them is by massive dredging, capital dredging, which everybody knows requires a lot of capital outlay, capital investment in this regard. And we're talking to financial institutions who are ready to invest in developing the blue economy and the brown economy. We are talking to quite a group of people, and they've shown interest, because we are looking at it also from the environmental impact. Like you rightly observed, for us to address the environmental challenge that comes with flooding, we must, as a matter of policy, a matter of government positioning, we must address this issue of dredging. Unless we dredge, we cannot be able to address the issue of flooding. And a lot of people have bought into this. Government is clear about this, and then we're talking to the various finance organizations that can help us in addressing this challenge. So we're engaging a lot of people in this regard.
Okay, I don't know if the doctor can also make a comment on this.
Okay, just to say that the right person to answer this question has answered it. And it's basically that But we're also aware, because we've been engaging with them on the issue of dredging for a while. We're also aware that they are making inroads in terms of procuring private sector people to come in and do it on a PPP basis. We're aware of that, and we're thankful for that. I'm happy to also hear that the government also recognizes the environmental advantages of dredging. And so, yeah, I'm glad that those have been mentioned, and we hope that that can be pursued with the urgency that is required.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to take a comment from the chat box. I have from Kevin. Says, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Olise, Chartered at Institute of Transport Administration of Nigeria. My questions are directed to the General Manager on the issues of automation. Drawing experience from the Apapa Port in Lagos State, automation is the major challenge that is causing delays in container clearing, leading to congestion within the port and the access corridors that lead to the port. So what are the plans in place to avoid replication in Anambra State? I think this is directed to Wanes.
So, okay.
Dr. George, you may also comment, but I'd like Wanes to respond first.
Yeah, okay. If one else responds, then I've responded. So same
Okay.
thing.
First of all, I will answer the question very shortly. I would like to come first back to the previous discussions on the funding of dredging. First of all, you need to consider, and we're not talking only Onitsha, we're not only talking Anambra State. If we're talking development of the river, then we are talking the entire nation. So can you imagine yourself as a highway where a bus service is driving and collecting people and dropping people? So that is actually the invention or the initial further plan, that you might collect containers in Onitsha which go to Lokoja or even to Baru and vice versa. So you actually create a chain of transportation over the entire river. Again, by making the river accessible, one thing. Secondly, by creating free zones, you will attract additional investors. These investors might be able to fund a part of the dredging part. Are we able to do this entirely without governmental funding? No, I don't believe. I think we need to look in a sincere partnership between government and private sectors in order to start developing the river. Although these investors or these private investors are yet not there for the moment, I suppose, so we need to look for them, and we need to look into an open discussion and an open conversation about how to achieve this. Again, in general, everything will happen, and I'm talking even beyond Onitsha, everything is depending on that. If you want to create a valuable interland connection, everything is only related to that. Now, to answer your second question concerning congestion, I think everything is related to a good relationship with the authorities on site. Don't start up with the wrong foot. Make sure you have a good and reasonable understanding with customs. Will these processes take time? Yes, obviously they will take time. But the amount of containers which are going in and out in seaports is not comparable to what we are doing in Onitsha. By having a good working relationship with these people, will make these processes easier. I'm convinced. So in terms of dwell time of having your cargo waiting for you to be delivered, I'm 100% sure we can reduce this time tremendously compared to the seaports.
Okay, just before I allow Doctor to respond, to also add his comment, let me just add another question that is related to the discussion. So my name is Dr. Cordelia Udo. What are the timelines or timeframes for these port issues? How is it being funded? And is the River Niger Bridge operational? So 3 different questions, and then you can now make your comment to the earlier question. Doctor.
Thank you. So let us be very clear. We've started operations and we're operating. We're receiving cargo. Right now, we last year alone, we received some cargo from Lokoja, from the tile manufacturers who come in, deliver tiles to Onitsha and take clay from Onitsha back to Lokoja. So there is some bit of commercial activity or going on at Onitsha. And right now, because the tide is high, we're expecting that we'll receive cargo. But the issue has always been whether we can maximize the potential of the port by receiving cargo all year round. So that there is a level of business going on currently there. And so for timelines where we've started, we hope to optimize operations. And we're looking at starting to receive commercial cargo from Lagos this month. We're working hard at it. There are certain logistical problems that we have that are being sorted. In terms of, so we can receive cargo from Lagos. In terms of making Onitsha the port of final destination and port of origin, which obviously requires some customs permits here and there. We are right at the final stages of it. And that's why events like this, where we speak to stakeholders, is important. There's a need for the customs to speed up the process. They are trying, but they need to speed up the process for us a lot more so that we can obtain all the licenses or permits that we need. We're nearly there. We've been on it, but we just wish it would be a little bit faster so that so that people can ship their goods from China actually and get it. But right now we can take goods from Lagos, we can take goods from Lokoja, we can take goods from wherever. So this is ongoing. And so the timeline, in terms of timeline, we're already on it. We're on it already. But in terms of what the dredging will do is to optimize our operation all year round. Thank you. Okay. What other, you raised another question?
The question I raised was on automation that Wannes had responded to, but I wanted you to make comment on that.
Okay, in terms of automation, you have to walk, crawl, then you walk, then you run before you run. So what we think the end goal is to completely automate. But right now we are at the process of using a lot of technology. We're deploying technology to ensure that we process goods very quickly and that cargo is processed very quickly. Wannes has spoken to that. We do feel that we will be nimble and efficient, and because this is a service, at the end of the day, it's going to be a service. We're going to be competing with other ports around the country. Believe me, we're going to be competing with the Lagos ports. We're going to be competing with the Port Harcourt, the Eastern ports. We're going. And if the Warri ports that becomes very operational, we're going to be competing. So it's a question of service, and this is where I think Port of Antwerp has the advantage, because they have the advantage of running a very, very efficient system across Belgium and across the world. And the ports, if you notice, the small ports that Port of Antwerp operates in Benin Republic, just like it's run more efficiently than ours, and so they have the experience, and that's why we really went out of our way to get them on board, because we feel that it's a service industry. If we render service and render it quickly and efficiently, that a lot more people would embrace us. So yeah, we are working towards automation. We had to start with we're using a lot of technology, but as time goes on, we aspire for full automation. Thank you.
Let's go back to Madam Commissioner. The last time we visited the port, we were having a meeting with some stakeholders, including the keke drivers, the transport community, the general manager, etc. Can you just tell us more about that effort?
Okay, when you look at the statistics of what Wens has been saying, that when the port becomes fully operational, then they will be processing, did he say 12 containers per hour or 20 containers an hour? So the impact of that is that eventually some part of it will be on our roads. So we're looking at the logistics of seeing how the inflow and outflow of traffic would be when the port becomes fully operational. And that's what we will looking further, talking with Ministry of Works to make sure that we have the right roads. The essential thing is for us to give them an enabling environment, because their success will also spill up into us being successful in that area as well. And the people of Anambra and the people of neighboring states, we're looking at Delta, Edo, and Kogi states, even down to Rivers and Bayelsa. So there's quite a lot of chain where ordinarily these trucks will be on the road, but with the Onitsha Seaport, most of these things will be, the trailers will not have to be on the road for too long. It's more of getting to their destination. So, and it will bring the commerce closer to the Anambra and our neighbors, because if the port of destination becomes Onitsha and most of the commerce is around that place, it means that it's going to be a win-win for everyone. And we are going to look particularly into the design of our roads to make sure that we have a free and easy flowing traffic for the containers to be on the road. And the other emphasis also is on the safety of the people, because if you have such big trucks and you have smaller vehicles on the road, we have to ensure that everyone is safe, not only making money, but being safe while you're making the money. Thank you.
Last question for Chief. Okay, not last question, but I have one more question for Chief. This is from Stanford Mba to Chief Moalu. Projects of this nature are financed by the private sector, typically by way of BFOT. How is the federal government incentivizing private sector participation? Is there a framework that ensures that investors' returns are guaranteed? Muted, sir.
You recall, when I spoke initially, I said something, and that is that there is a guarantee of policy consistency, because that has always been the problem the private sector has often identified when it has to do with bringing in their funds to do projects like this. So we have secured that guarantee that investments in this sector are guaranteed, and there's no problem with that. As to whether we are talking about financing, the private sector players that we have engaged with regards to doing partnering with us to do this issue of dredging are bringing in their funds. All discussions have centered on funding, using the funds as it's expected, and delivering at the end of the day. And these assurances have been given. Their source of funding are more or less guaranteed, because it's actually beyond them. The discussions we have had, even their financiers are also part of the discussion, and we are confident, relying on the track record of these financiers and these organizations themselves, and what they have done in the past in various other clients. We are confident that the issue of funding their projects will not be a problem.
I believe the MD has a question.
Yes, good evening or good afternoon, panelists. And thank you very much, Managing Director Niwa, for joining us, and all the other very distinguished panelists. I think one question which I think has, if I look through the chat, a lot of people are asking, and probably this question goes to George Moalu. George Wango, the concessionaire of the port, who led the consortium. I know that there's an investment plan for the next, I would say, 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, and you're engaging with institutional investors, both on the equity side and on the debt side. But the common man and common woman who trades in Onitsha main market or building materials, or is in Oka that owns a small SME, some of them are also asking, people in the diaspora are asking, is there a structure that allows people from the region, anybody who's interested as an individual investor, play a role or get a piece of the pie, as the case may be? How can the common man invest in this project and also benefit from the returns? George Wango, are you there?
Okay, sorry, I needed Augusta to unmute me. So thank you very much, Mark. This is a very good question. This project is ours, it's for all of us, and we realize, and when I was speaking, I said that we are holding this project in trust for the rest of Nigerians, and the people from the Southeast. And because of this, we have an inclusive financing structure. We have an inclusive equity structure. And what we have, of course, we have something in place for everyone to come into this project, practically everyone. And the end goal for us is to list on the stock exchange so that everybody can, this our shared prosperity. This project is going to be incredibly profitable, and we encourage everyone to be part of it. So at the end goal is to list on the stock exchange, but for everyone but we also have other structures in place, and if people that are interested can reach us directly so that we don't spend time. But the simple answer to your question is yes, we have things in place. In fact, we have allocated a portion of the equity to the community in Onitsha. A portion of it will be owned by the community in Onitsha. We're just waiting to finalize the process for them to assess it. And it's the same for a lot more of the people. So yes, the answer is yes, they can come. And the end goal, like I said, is to list on the stock exchange so that everyone would have a piece of the project. Thank you.
Very much, George. I think my next question, obviously what I'm trying to do, I'm scanning all the different platforms. There are over 100 questions, and I'm just trying to see how we can get all of them in between the next 20 minutes, because the panel ends in 20 minutes. I think this question is for the MD Niwa, Chief George Moalu. Obviously, we want to appreciate you and thank you for all the work you've done in getting to this point, but there's still a little more work to be done. But a lot of people want to know, how do we prioritize? We know that there isn't resources resources are finite, wishes are infinite, right? We know that there is the Oguta port and that dredging program that perhaps the Imo State governor and federal government are leading. We also know that there's a Oguta port which is under construction. How can we, all the stakeholders on this panel, support you to prioritize the river port as the gateway to opening up this economic corridor? I think oh, we lost him. We lost him.
Okay, we have a few more questions and then we'll just be wrapping up. But so I'm just trying to scan to pick up the questions. Now, Madam Commissioner, we have a question from Olisa. Says, is there any plans to build rail line to link the cities that you had earlier mentioned? So containers would move via the train. Using train is much better and more sustainable. I think this speaks to the rail master plan you had earlier talked about.
Hello? The question is?
Okay, the question reads, is there any plans to build rail line to link the city you mentioned earlier? So containers will be moved via the train. Using train is much sustainable and much better.
Okay, that's a very good question. And Anambra at the moment is, we're in the process of, how do I say it now to be politically correct? But we are moving towards having a rail transportation. And the ideal would be that the track would run from the Onitsha Seaport to the airport, then run to Nnewi, Ekulobia, most of our key commercial hubs. So in a situation like that, once we have it in place, then there will be less stress on our basic roads, and less congestion on the road. So yes, the rail, freight, rail, monorail, all those are on the table. But one of the things that we're trying to do with this conversation is to center it on the Onitsha River Port. There's so much on our plate, but the focal point of the discussion today is on the Onitsha Seaport. Thank you.
I have one more question from His Royal Majesty, Igwe Dr. Emeka Ilono JP. Is it Duno? Igwe, if it's a Duno. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. Says, making Onitsha Port a port of final destination and one of origin is a great necessity. One that will help to not only decongest Apapa Port, but also drastically improve revenue generation of the federal and state governments. Considering the poor performance of government in doing business in Nigeria, what efforts have we made to encourage importers, exporters, clearing agents, and other major users of the ports to come together and take over the dredging of the River Niger up to the Onitsha inland port? I think this question should have been for Dr. Moalu, but he's not here.
George, can I answer?
The concessionaire, do you want to comment on this?
Okay, it's a very loaded question. Okay, so I think, okay, the question speaks of making Onitsha a port of final destination, right? The efforts we've made to encourage importers and exporters, clearing agents and all. So we, even before we took over the port was handed over to us, we started meeting with stakeholders. We met with the members of the Onitsha Chamber of Commerce. We met with first of all, we met with His Royal Highness, the Obi of Onitsha, who facilitated for us to meet so many market associations and all. And we also want to thank the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. We know that the role they played, especially the Southeast section, that is the chairperson is here today. She's been amazing in trying to open up doors for us. So we have reached out to quite a number of people here around here. We've also the GM, that's one, has taken a lot of trips to Lagos to engage with a lot of the shipping lines, a lot of the agents, the operators, and the reception has been overwhelming. Everyone wants to come to Onitsha, and it's for a good reason. People come to Onitsha. And sitting in my office in Abuja sometimes, I just see a lot of, I just get requests for people to come and see me. Major shipping lines just keep trooping in to have a word with us, to partner with us. So even though we've been reaching out, there are people that have also been coming to reach out to us. And the issue of getting them together to take over the dredging of the Niger is, it's not that easy. The dredging is the responsibility of government. If we're to dredge, we also need the support of the government, or the government to give us approval to dredge. And we do know that they've been doing quite a bit. It's not as easy as it is just putting together people and getting them to support the dredging process. But NIWA is doing their best to make that happen. I know that they are putting forward a structure that allows private sector investors to come and dredge and then collect tolls along the waterway to recover their investment. We think that's a step in the right direction. But for now, I honestly think that that's insufficient without government support and government guarantees. Again, the Anambra State government, through the governor, has been very, very helpful around the support of the dredging. Is taking it upon himself to assist us in finding solutions. So yeah, we're engaging with everyone and we thank you for this opportunity again to reach out to a lot of people, and so that they know, the more people that reach out, the more ideas that come on board to resolve the issues. Thank you.
Okay, Chief is back, so I'm going to repeat the question again, and hopefully he'll be able to comment. Chief, we had a question when I think you had a break in transmission. Says making Onitsha Port a port of final destination and one of origin is a great necessity, one that will help to not only decongest Apapa Port, but also drastically improve revenue generation of the federal and state governments. Considering the performance of government in doing business in Nigeria, what efforts have we made to encourage importers, exporters, clearing agents, and other major users of the ports to come together and take over the dredging of the River Niger? This question is from His Royal Majesty Igwe Dr. Emeka Ilono. Is a Dunu, Igwe if it's a Dunu. JP. So you're muted.
I guess the question is for me, like you said.
Yes.
The truth about it is that for Onitsha River Port to be viable, as we expect it to be, it has to be a port of final destination. And even when we are doing the concessioning processes, I also initiated the process of engaging the agencies of government that are responsible, particularly the Nigerian customs, with a view to actualizing this objective of making Onitsha a port of destination. And I recall also that when Dr. George Wangu was speaking, he also made mention of that the process is ongoing and that they're almost there. So what we have been doing on our own part is to help in putting pressure on all other agencies of government, particularly the customs, to see that this particular agenda is actually realized, because we appreciate the importance. As to creating the platform for getting people together, that's why when I started my initial intervention in the course of this stakeholders engagement, I commended you and your team, I mean Mark Okoyena and his team, for putting up this platform, because this is an opportunity for all critical stakeholders to engage, appreciate the challenge ahead of us, meet and discuss on the possibilities on how best we can address the issues and be able to get through. There is no doubt as to the fact that the issue of dredging must be done. There is no pretense about it. We need to do the dredging. We need to open up the channels. You need to make that possible so that we can have all year round navigation possible. As I said earlier, today we have less than half of the available waterway channels in Nigeria all year round navigable. So we need to get it 100%. And when I mean 100%, I mean 100%, so that every aspect of our waterways can be all year round navigable, so that we can have cargo all year round. I think also, like George rightly said, the major responsibility is for government. So what government is doing now is to create the enabling environment, to clear the platform, so that PPP, we can achieve the objective using the PPP. So if there are additional support information we can get from private sector players, it is not cast in iron. We'd like to receive them. We are open to further discussion. We're open to further engagement. If we have many players who are interested in working together with us, why not? We can share the channels. The important thing is that we want the channels open. And that is the bottom line. That is the end game expectation.
Okay, when you left also, the managing director also asked a question. I'd like for him to repeat that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moalu. My question was just to mention, just to highlight, I know that resources are finite, but promises and wish lists are infinite, right? So, but at the same time, I know that there's a project on the Oguta Lake that the government of Imo State and the federal government are looking at, and there's some dredging that was commissioned at the time. There's also the Lokoja port that is under construction, and a number of other different projects. My question was really to ask, how can we, the stakeholders who are represented here, the state government, the private sector, the regulator, the federal government, the concessionaire, what can we do to prioritize this one and make sure that we can get this one running like yesterday, notwithstanding all the other projects that you're working on?
Yes, the two projects you mentioned, Lokoja River Port and the Oguta River Port, are priority projects of my department, of my authority, the National Inland Waterways Authority. And we're doing everything we can within our reach to actualize these projects. One of the things we have done is that we have opened it up by way of receiving unsolicited proposals from private sector players who are ready even to concession these ports, even at the stage we are, though not completed yet, and then complete it themselves. We are talking, discussions are at very advanced stages. Apart from that, there has been consistent provision within the budget annually of funding, not that we have been able to receive all what we need to get these ports completed, but the support has been there from government. We've been encouraged by way of the little resources that keeps coming on a regular basis so that we can continue the work that is being done on these ports. As I speak to you, the equipment required to run the Lokoja port are all on ground. All the cranes, they're all in our headquarters now. Some of them are packed there. Some of them are at the actual river port itself in Lokoja. So everybody is concerned. We want to get this port completed and then put it to use because of the need for interconnectivity. By the time we have the Lokoja port fully completed, have the Uguta port fully completed, Onitsha is already completed and concession. There is, you see the link there. We can also link up Lokoja to Baro, because also in Baro we have a completed port. We are also in discussion with a team that wants to concession the port. So we are trying as much as possible to get the private sector fully involved so that they can participate for us, because we understand the enormity of the potentials that lie in this sector that needs to be explored. And all the needed effort is being made. Government has been quite supportive, and we want to thank the federal government for the encouragement and support we have received so far.
Okay, the chairperson for Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and representative of the organized private sectors active in Anambra State and in the Southeast, Lady Ada Chukwudozie. She is the chairperson for Anambra, Ebonyi, and Enugu Man. I don't know if she is able to unmute and just make a comment concerning all the deliberations we've had so far. No, ma'am. Okay, she's probably unable to unmute. Now, there's some deliberations going on in the chat box. I just want Chief to clarify. Can the concessionaire raise capital and dredge the river without the approval from the federal government? I just need that clarification so that the participants in the chat box can put a pause to the back and forth that is going on there.
Yes, you want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Yes, why not? Even in the concession agreement, there's a provision that the concessionaire can dredge, and then we can pay him on a later date. It's clearly written in the agreement there. So if the concessionaire can dredge,
without an approval from the federal government.
There's already an approval. Because if the agreement that the concession agreement has a provision in the agreement that the concessionaire can do some level of dredging, and then we pay him.
But won't this affect the equity of the concessionaire?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. The concessionaire,
if
they want to speak to that. Okay, please go ahead, Chief.
Yes, you must understand that dredging is measured. Dredging is not just like start from Kanu to Katsina or from Katsina to, no. Dredging is measured. The cubic meter is measured. So we actually know what it involves. So the cost implication can easily be determined. If by the time the concessionaire has enough funding or is able to source funding before or more than the federal government can do, and then he's ready to invest in that sector, he lets us know what he wants to do. The measurements are made, the cost is determined, and then we work it out on how to refund him. By way, either we refund him in cash or we refund him by way of increasing equity or by way of extending his lease period.
I'd like to make a comment on that. No. Okay, Lady Ada is here now. Lady Chukwudozie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you also hear me?
Yes, I can. I was asking that as a representative of the organized private sector active in Anambra State, you know best the economic potential of the Onitsha Port. You know best what should be done. You know best what the organized private sector need from this port. So, listening to your deliberation so far, what are your comments?
Well, the revitalization of the Onitsha River Port aligns with our vision for economic growth and industrial development in Anambra State. So by leveraging this port's potential, we can create an enabling environment for our manufacturers, enabling them to expand their reach, reduce costs, and tap into new markets. Also, an improved access to international trade routes can also attract foreign direct investments in the wake, especially in the wake of African Continental Free Trade Area or agreement that is ongoing now. So, as Manufacturers Association of Nigeria in Anambra State, we are committed to actively supporting the revitalization efforts of the Onitsha River Port, and we highly commend the MD of NEWA, the commissioner, and SEPA, of course, the concessionaire. And I thank the MD of ANSEPA for putting this platform together. We pledge our collaboration, our expertise, and resources whenever it's needed to ensure the efficient utilization of this critical infrastructure. So we will also work closely with all stakeholders, government bodies, and industry partners to jointly develop a comprehensive strategy that drives growth, sustainability, and prosperity of our manufacturing community. So I want to extend my gratitude to all present at this conference. Onitsha River Port represents an invaluable asset for our state's economic growth and advancement of our manufacturing sector. So I agree that we should all collaborate, both the private sector, public sector, government, all stakeholders. Let us unite our efforts and to harness the potential within this historic port and pave the way for a brighter future for the Anambra in particular. Thank you all. May this conference actually be a catalyst for a positive change and progress. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lady Chukwudozie. Just to correct something, this conference was put together by the Ministry of Transport and ANSEPA, mostly the Ministry of Transport.
I'm sorry about that, but I was just coopted into it. I think it was last night I got to hear about it, and I've not been in the country, actually. This is about my first day at work. I've been a bit indisposed. So either way, Madam Commissioner, I want to thank you especially for putting this together, you and Mark. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
It's one government, so it's Anambra State in particular.
Okay. Well, you represent that government, I mean.
Okay, thank you. We're about rounding up now, so I'll just take last words from the panelists. I'll start with our project finance expert, Dr. Ejiofor. Just in 1 minute, can you just give any last words?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Augusta. I think it's been a very engaging discussions, really. In terms of, just parting words, number one, in terms of private capital, right, there's never been a better time to sort of do infrastructure than now. There's a lot of capital out there looking for bankable projects to put money into. Clearly, the local space in terms of interest rates are not very favorable, but there are also other sources of liquidity that, projects like this can tap into. You have infrastructure funds, at a lot cheaper than commercial bank rates. You have AFDB, you have a Frexim, you have Chinese funding. So there's a lot of capital out there looking for bankable projects. So my final thoughts would be, as we continue to sort of, review the development of this critical infrastructure. Let us also know that there are other ancillary businesses around the ports that can support the economy. So, you have a very viable market there. You could think about an industrial hub or industrial project, industrial park around the area. We now have, the state also now has an airport. The corridor leads from Onitsha all the way to Enugu. You think about that corridor from a viability perspective. So a lot of things tie together to make this project and this initiative viable, and we'll be there to support the debt and equity raise to the extent required. Thank you.
So much, Dr. Ejiofor, and considering your many ideas on this project, I'd hope that, or I believe that there will be further conversation between yourself and the concessionaire after this conversation. Let's move to Juanes the wait. Any last words? Just the 1 minute.
Well, thank you everybody for the opportunity of well, thanks again for organizing this meeting. I think I have just a couple of things to say. Is a matter we need to look beyond on what is happening today. We can be very successful or we can't be very successful. Everything depends on what has been mostly been discussed. We also need to take in consideration that not only the dredging of the river, any type of modal shift by rail, by water, will have an environmental impact. There will always be ports, rail or water, who needs to handle that cargo. So, and we are ready, we are there to provide that service to the state. But please do look also beyond just Anambra State. There is more in stake of the entire nation developing the waterways to the extent that Nigeria is growing as such. Look beyond the door which you are opening right now. Possibilities are there, opportunities are there, just grab them and take them, but we need to take action. And that's the only thing I have to say to that. But again, thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you for inviting me part of the panel. And to all my future customers which are listening, we are more than welcome to welcome you on our port. And we are ready for you. So bring your cargo into Onitsha. Let us prove that we are successful. Thank you.
Okay, just talking about your future customers, someone asked that what size of, and I'm sure you've answered this already, but what size of cargo coming to Anambra right now?
Well, listen, what we are doing right now, any customer which is a wholesale, any small customer which has a small shop in Onitsha is finally our end customer. Currently, we are strictly speaking, we are the one who are taking care of your cargo. So we are loading the vessel, we are loading anything in between up to the truck is our business. That's where we're good at. So coming down to that point, our major customers, which we are talking to right now, are obviously the shipping lines, because their cargo are being controlled either by themselves or by their agents. So that is the people we are talking with right now. So that are our future. But again, the small grocery, the small shop, everybody's a customer from us. If they ask us jump, then we ask them how high should we jump for you. We want to make it a success. We want to serve our customers to the best possible way we can.
Thank you, sir. Let's listen to Madam Commissioner. I mean, you put this together. So did it meet your expectations? Do you feel that this panel have probably dissected the economic potential of the Onitsha River Port? And any last words?
Well, as I've always emphasized, everything is teamwork. the Ministry of Transport and ANSIPA have been working hand in glove. So it's not just the Ministry of Transport, but most importantly, it's Anambra State. So the emphasis is that the state is trying to create an enabling environment for our investors. And the ease of doing business is what we have to target. So wherever the concessionaire would require our assistance, we will try as much as possible to be there for the concessionaire. And he's been very transparent in saying that the investment structure is still fluid in the sense that people can still come on board. So that's the area that the conversation would continue after this program, so that we'll be in a position to also explain to potential investors how they can tap into this opportunity. So the conversation will continue. This is not the end, this is just the beginning. And I must give a big kudos to Mark Okoye. I mean, he really tried to convince me that we need to do this. So more of the kudos goes to Mark and his team. And the state also is doing everything that it can to make sure that investment is, that Anambra State is an investment destination. So it's not an issue of one person getting the kudos. It's not about kudos, it's about us getting the investment environment that we need. So if this gets us to where we're going, then everybody will be happier for it. So once again, I thank Ministry of Transport, and I thank Mr. Governor in particular for making us to be more investment conscious. We've done several town hall meetings. We just finished one in Lagos. We are doing another one in Abuja, and these issues will also come up there. So the more we interrogate this, to use our governor's phrase, the more we'll be in a better position to educate the potential investors in this area. So the conversation will definitely continue. And I thank most of the people that have participated in this, and I hand over back to you, Augusta. Thank you.
Thank you. And last we'll hear from Chief. Chief.
Let me begin by congratulating the Minister of Transport and ANSIPA for putting this together. Like I did say, platforms like this, where you can involve stakeholders, is quite important, especially at this time. We are trying to drive the process. I want to assure everyone of our commitment as a department of government to see that Onitsha River Port is viable and put to very effective use. Anything we can do on our own part to see that things work, you can bank on us, you can count on us. We are committed to see it work. I give my word to the concessionaire that anything we can do as an organization to make things easy for him, anything we can do to support the initiative, to make Onitsha River Port viable and to open up the channels, that he can count on us. So let me also appreciate sincerely all the participants for their support, their commitment, because to get people, to get stakeholders together in situations like this provides an opportunity for them to speak out their mind and be able to encourage you, so that the areas where you need to add effort, you now be propelled. And a particular mention is the leader, I will call the leader of MAN in the East, Dr. Mrs. Ada Chukwulozile. I was very much encouraged by the comments she made, expressing the commitment of the Manufacturers Association with regards to seeing that Onitsha River Port is fully operational. Because the truth about it is that it's about the importers, it's about the manufacturers, it's about the business community, because it is the owner of the goods
Okay, I feel we've lost him. I think we lost him, and now we are going to take closing remarks from the Executive Director of Anambra State Investment Promotion and Protection Agency, Mr. Ejike Sisioma.
Okay.
Thank you, Augusta, for this great moderation so far. I want to thank everybody sincerely for making our time to be part of this very vital conference on unlocking the economic potentials of Onitsha River Port. I think it's been very enriching, and I'm so happy that we made our time to be able to come, join us, and on behalf of the Ministry of Transport, ANSIPA, Mr. Governor, we want to really appreciate all of you and say that next time we'll call on you, that you'll be able to honor us with your presence. I know you put in your valuable time, more than 2 hours into it, and we really appreciate you. Many people say this is a game changer for the Southeast economy, and we can't agree less. So we hope that all the contributions, the comments we've done so far, that the concessionaire and all the stakeholders will work and achieve this vital project that is at the heart of the success of the whole of the Southeast economy. Thank you once again, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, sir. And that brings us to the end of today's conference. We have been discussing exploring the economic potentials of the Onitsha River Port. Special thanks to all our panelists that gave us their time today. I mean, this is 2 hours, 14 minutes, and it's a work day, so you can imagine that you're all at work. Special thanks to Madam Commissioner for partnering with the agency on this initiative. We hope that this is a continuous conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to do more on the Onitsha River Port and finally optimize that project. Special thanks also to the concessionaire and the MD NIWA. And from ANSIPA, thank you and good evening.